our next presenter is Chetan. Chetan is the founder at Monetized MCP and Fluora AI, and he's joining us from here in the Bay Area. Chetan, excited to have you here today. Thanks, man.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
The floor is yours.
All right, fantastic. So I'm going to be speaking today, beginning to speak about Monetized MCP. So this is a diagram that many of us recognize from the MCP sort of webpage. And essentially MCP was envisioned to be essentially be a data connector layer between essentially the LLM and data sources, whether it be local on your machine or remotely on the internet. And so what sort of started off as this sort of kind of very simplistic type of technology has really erupted into a massive sort of movement, as we all know. And I really see that MCP is turning almost into like the HTTP for AI. And so, and with that sort of larger vision, there's all these new things that folks are talking about, things that weren't originally planned for that are important to fill in if MCP can really sort of fill this gap of being this universal protocol in the AI space. And one area where we're seeing a really big gap is around monetization. So MCP didn't originally have a monetization sort of framework built in. So right now, if you want to monetize an MCP server, essentially a human has to go open an account, put the credit card in, get an API key, and plug that in. And we believe that that's really a very manual process, and it's important to find a way for this to be a fully automated process. So if if a user wants to use a resource, via an agent, that agent can essentially transact autonomously, and we think that really would allow for a lot of autonomous coordination on the internet between AIs. And so so that was our impetus: is really could we create a model that will allow for this in a way that didn't require any changes to the core protocol. And so what we came up with was Monetized MCP, which is essentially a peer-to-peer sort of system. And essentially Monetized MCP are a set of libraries that an MCP server can import in order to receive programmatic payments. And so the way it works is that on your local or cloud machine, you essentially have an MCP host, and you have a digital wallet. This digital wallet can be crypto or fiat. And that digital wallet can send payments to the Monetized MCP server, which can now receive those payments, verify those payments, settle those payments, and then respond with goods or services. And so we have this initial version has been built using USDC stablecoins, and we're able to do that using X402, which is a new payment protocol released by Coinbase. And I know a lot of folks have a lot of mixed impressions with crypto, and I actually am with you. I'm in the same camp. I think there's been a lot of grift and a lot of crap, but there also is some really great pieces in that from the crypto world. And I believe that the stablecoin sort of element is a really great element that we're obviously seeing being recognized via regulation. There's been a lot of great movements in that space. And the reason is that they offer a lot of great utility. And so, and it's really important to note that by using crypto, there's essentially no payment credentials ever leaving your machine. A lot more to speak about that, but I'll just leave it at that and move forward. So the second piece is with Monetized MCP, we have 3 standardized tools that each Monetized MCP server implements. The first is price listing, the second is payment methods, and the third is make purchase. And these are 3 tools in addition to any other tools implemented by the MCP server. So the way it works is that the MCP host queries the price listing tool from the server, essentially saying, what are you selling? The server responds with a list of services and prices, like a menu. And the host will then call payment methods to get the server's wallet info. And then it'll call make purchase. It'll say, hey, I want item X, and here's my payment. The server would then settle that payment and then execute the requested service. And so, so this is kind of very simple back and forth that allows the host to essentially pay for a service. And then essentially we have Fluora, which is a marketplace of these monetized MCP servers. And so I will now walk you through a short demo to show it to you in action. So we have an MCP server, a Fluora MCP server plugged into Claude, and the same, obviously can plug into Cursor or plug into LangChain or any place which accepts MCP servers. And so we're going to begin by saying, search the Fluora registry for MCP servers. So it's going to use the Fluora MCP server and connect with the Fluora registry. And it says that it has 2 MCP servers. The first is Cambrian. This is the data provider that recently onboarded one of the folks in our private beta. The second one, which I'm going to demo for you today, is called PDF Shift. This is a service that we wrapped into an MCP server, and it basically takes a website and converts it into a PDF for a fee. And so the website we're going to convert today is our splash page, which is Fluora.ai. And we're going to be using real money to do this transaction. So we're going to be using USDC, and the balance of my USDC wallet is $11.727. So now if we come back to Claude, over here, and say, great. So we're going to say, convert the website Fluora.ai into a PDF using PDF Shift. Great. And so the transaction cost is 0.1 USDC, and it's going to be calling the make purchase tool. So normally it makes a few tool calls, as I just demonstrated earlier, but it has some context from previous transactions, so it knows exactly which one to call. So here we find that if we kind of look at what's actually being sent, we see that it calls the make purchase tool. It attaches the payment with the wallet address, and then it attaches the website URL, Fluora.ai, as a parameter. And we see that it was completed successfully. We can click here to open the link. And indeed, this is correct. And we can come back to our wallet. The balance was 11.727. We're going to look at our wallet balance again. It's 11.627. So it did it correctly. It spent 0.1 USDC to get this website converted. So now if we go back to the slides. Oops. Okay, so just to review, essentially we have Monetized MCP, and that turns any MCP server, or allows any MCP server to now receive programmatic payments. Then you have Fluora, which is a registry of these Monetized MCP servers. Think of us as like a Google or an eBay for Monetized MCP servers. And then we have an AI agent that can query this registry to connect and transact with the server. And this could be LangChain, could be Claude, whatever, or Cursor, whatever it is. And so you might be thinking, well, where are you using this? Where's the use case? And our focus right now is with workplace automation. And so we're essentially building a Slack widget that allows SMBs to be able to automate workflows. So for instance, an SMB could say, update my website with customer feedback for my customer feedback, and then market it. So in that case, they would make that request to the Slack widget. That Slack widget would then look into a particular, let's say, customer feedback folder in Notion, get all the information, make the updates to the website via WordPress, and then come to Fluora to find a marketing service that could then market that website. And it could, basically get bids from different MCP servers. And so now you as a user could review all the bids, could look at the reputations of each service and look at the pricing, and then you could select one and then kick off the marketing campaign. So now what used to take many steps and lots of time can now be streamlined and automated within a few minutes. And we think that this is really, really exciting. And so, we believe that, focusing on SMBs opens the door for a lot of different types of use cases. You can imagine a lot of different types of workflows that can be automated. So we're currently in private beta. And if you're building an MCP server that could be a great addition to this marketplace, we would love to have you as part of the private beta. So please send me an email. My email will be on the last slide. And we're also going to be launching in a soft launch in August, so just in a few weeks. So we'd love to hear from you if that could be you. And lastly, we're also going to be co-sponsoring a hackathon with Coinbase. That'll be August 9th and 10th in New York City. And it's going to be called Code NYC. And they're specifically looking for product builders. And there'll be $35,000 in prizes. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you are also building something that could be a great addition to this marketplace, something that's at the intersection of AI and commerce, please apply. And please also let me know, and I can put in a good word for you with the organizers. And lastly, if you're interested in checking, lastly, actually, if you want to check out Monetized MCP, this is an open source repo, and it is live now. So you can go check it out. You can download the code. You can start playing with it. and would love to hear your thoughts and, of course, your contributions. We want to really incorporate we want this to be an industry standards as much as possible and incorporate different payment rails. We want it to incorporate other elements that, of course, work across the stack and support other people's projects. And that's it. My email is contact@fluora.ai. That's FLUORA. Thank you very much.
Awesome, Chetan. That was really cool.
That was a lot. That was a lot to take in. I don't think I fully understand everything, but I got the gist of it. I had one question, and it's kind of someone in the community had kind of brought this up. Is with the model kind of orchestrating the payment, that brings in a bunch of security questions, right? Mm-hmm. So what does that look like? Prompt injection or all these different type of things. So what are the considerations there you have to take in terms of security?
Yeah, so we're exploring all the different elements of that right now. And so one thing that we're looking at is really having a different module. So the LLM doesn't actually kick off the payment, but really puts the payment request in a queue, which then you would have to approve. And so we want to really put humans in the mix here and to make sure that they're really approving everything that actually when a payment is involved. And we hope that that's an initial sort of layer to create some security, but we are, of course, looking into the other elements as well involved in payments. And
does elicitations anywhere possibly maybe fit into that or that's not? Yeah.
Essentially, we're also looking into that as well. That's a recent development in MCP. So we're in process right now with all these questions.
That's cool.
Chetan, I'm really curious what you see as kind of your magic wand, right? A year from now, you've got a rich set of, MCPs that are accepting payments in your registry. What are some things that you think would be, top performers, like things that you think will be very popular?
Yeah, so we're excited by the SMB use case. So right now we see that a lot of the big players like ChatGPT and Perplexity are going after consumer, and we think that SMB is a very different workflow because you want to incorporate and link to all of your different SaaS tools like your Notion and your GitHub and all these different elements. And so to really figure out that user experience is going to be quite different. And so I really think that there's a lot of things you could do with things like marketing websites, building websites. A lot of things right now that require a human to click on a website, we think we can automate with AIs. And I think there's an enormous amount of things that can be done. Everything from hiring freelancers to launching offsites to internal operations for your company, for building and designing products to launching products. All of these things can essentially be agentic workflows that could be part of our ecosystem.
Can you imagine, right now, one of the interesting challenges, I think, as just the breadth of model capability expands and just what models can do, as models get sort of paired with MCP servers and then a set of sort of agentic capabilities, you can imagine sort of an MCP server that you could sort of send a prompt to and say hey, I need a 30-second video about this, developed, created, kind of curated with me. I don't even have an account. I don't really want to have an account with your thing. I just sort of saw your MCP server. You've got some pricing in there. I don't want to. I want to be able to transactionally leverage your capabilities. Could you imagine something like that? Because that was my first thought. Was man, there's so many services, and a lot of times it's I have to give them everything to even try what their capabilities are. But I would say as a marketer, if I could get something that would do some interesting SEO optimization on my website, right? Okay, I've got this really nice capability. I've built it out. I don't need to sign up for your website. I don't need to go to your website. I would just like to engage with you directly from my IDE, again, as a marketer, right from Slack, maybe even. So I think there's a lot of, I think those would be some ones that I would think could jump up really high. It's very, kind of tactical, transactional, like your PDF example, but maybe tied into the models. So they're able to actually generate something relatively unique and maybe differentiate themselves from, Sora or whatever else may be out there.
Totally, yeah. So we want to really kind of demonstrate how this is working with Slack, and around a lot of these use cases you mentioned, I think are great fits. And we think micro-SaaS is, I don't think that's a term. I don't know if it's a widely used term, but there's all these little things that could be of value, like developing a 30-second, video or whatever it is. And I think there'd be a whole ecosystem of these types of products. and which, as you said, user doesn't need to go to the website. All they need is this thing, and can the AIs kind of work to make that happen in a really seamless way?
Your microtransactions for micro-SaaS functionalities, I mean, I can see in the marketing universe an enormous amount of use cases for this. I just, let's just say you've built a really good blogging agent, right? Like something that that comes back and really writes like a human. And, I should be paying you for that, right? You've maybe done a ton of tweaking to the model. You've done a ton of tweaking to the way, your system prompts. You kind of create this cool agent. And it's like, hey, every article is like $7, right? Compared to what I'm paying for someone else, can I get something from ChatGPT that's better? Maybe not. And so now I'm willing to pay you this $5, $7, $9 fee to kind of generate something amazing for me. Even if it was, again, there might even be transactional man in the middle type, longer function, capabilities where I'm making a micropayment to get something back, but it's in an ecosystem where those micropayments are really easy to track. They're easy to sort of, kind of do it low risk. Even you can even imagine a scenario where it's like, some of this is kept in escrow, or like there's an escrow functionality where I want something that's a little bit longer function from a more complex AI assistant. I escrow the account, someone holds that while I wait for confirmation that the delivery's been made, and now that gets released. I think there's I really like this. I think it's really interesting. I like that you guys have approached building out the spec almost with your plugin, and so that people can add this to anything. Now I want to go build an SDK an MCP that actually does some cool shit for marketers, because as a marketer, as somebody who's not an engineer, there's a lot of transactional things. Can you imagine like, an MCP SDR, right? An MCP SDR where I'm paying, per meeting confirmed, right? Like, so I'm like, okay, I want you working on this thing, and now I want to pay you. And this could be like an individualized, MCP that I'm pulling in and just adding to my team. And now it's a Slack entity that I'm chatting with, and, I'm paying it, from a startup, like you said, from an SME, from a kind of a smaller size organization. I could scale up a few SDRs theoretically that were actually good, promising SDRs for 6 hours, right? Be like, I want to see what kind of impact this thing has and pay for it on an on-demand basis, instead of signing on a 2-month commit, a year-long commitment or something like that with how most people are trying to sell these things. So interesting, could be very disruptive.
I have a question, because I'm really fascinated with your approach, because I've been fooling around with some MCP stuff where I've kind of realized some of the value of an idea of kind of like an MCP interface. And that's kind of, it seems to be what you've done. It's like, here's a standard set of tools. You didn't have to enhance the MCP protocol because it has the building blocks, but here's an interface. So you have this interface now. So I really like that. So in terms of kind of like standardizing this I'm kind of naive to the payment space and whatnot, but I did like randomly see a tweet of something about like Stripe doing something with MCPs. Are they taking like a completely different approach, or is there a path forward between kind of like what they're doing or you're doing or whatever, of like what this kind of thing could be standardized into? Yeah.
So here's the thing is that I think when you think about any sort of standard, you want it, what Stripe did was around Stripe's payment protocol.
Yeah, of course.
So you want any sort of thing that comes to stand to be inclusive of everyone's payment protocols, not just Stripe, but everyone, crypto or Stripe or whoever it is. And so that's the first thing. And I felt like the second thing is that the way they designed it wasn't as extensible. So what they did is that you could price a tool. So every tool would have a separate price. Well, imagine if you're a pizza shop with 20 different types of pizzas, and each pizza can be ordered in 3 sizes. So now you need 60 different tools, which doesn't scale, right? So we think that it just wasn't as, we thought it was a great first step, but we're trying to kind of think a little bit more deeply about different use cases, so that we can encompass a lot of different types of use cases with one standard. I really see that what we're trying to do is include Stripe as well. We'd love to have Stripe as a payment rail in Monetized MCP.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, and I'm always a big fan of kind of like, you don't define kind of like the standard first. It's like, go implement, get something really kind of working, and then you kind of circle back. And a lot of times de facto standards come out, or we just kind of work on it. So that's interesting. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, Chetan, thanks so much for joining us today. And Paresh, thank you for being here as well. It was awesome having you both. We really appreciate the content and sharing so much of what you're doing. Everyone else, we'll be back again next week. And thank you all for joining us today.
Cool. Thank you all.
Thanks.